What's at stake for Ontario, and what might some key takeaways more federally perhaps be, or across the country? Here to talk about that, former Liberal Ontario Premier David Peterson and former Ontario Progressive Conservative leader Tim Hudak. Hi to both of you. Great to see you tonight. Thank you very much for making the time. Mr. Peterson, I wanted to start with you because you have a little experience with calling early elections. Do you think Doug Ford got the election he hoped for?
Yes. Generally speaking, this is an election unlike any other election I have seen. Almost every political action in this world is heading back to Washington these days, and it depends on the twitches and of the president. And I think that Doug Ford understood this. He really hasn't been campaigning on provincial issues, traditional provincial issues. And the reality is, the things he's campaigning on, he has very little influence. I mean, he went to Washington and was humiliated, and they've spent millions, advertising, making no impact in the United States that anybody can determine, including him, but it's all washed back into Ontario. So, look, it looks like he's going to win, and you have to give him credit for seizing the opportunity. If you measure life and by winning and losing, it looks like he's going to win this.
Mr. Hudak, your thoughts on the prospect of this being a single issue campaign and the dominance, really, as Mr. Peterson framed it, of the issues vis-a-vis Washington and the degree to which that has impacted the campaign?
Well, number one, Vash, this is an historic campaign, right? This is going to be Premier Doug Ford winning 3 consecutive majority governments with an increased share of the vote, right? Increased seats. That has not happened in Canadian history, or Ontario history. It's actually remarkable. A tribute to his leadership, his discipline in sticking a plan, and to Corey Tonick and his campaign team. Spectacular. Great strategy. Smart on the timing, and coordinated with every riding across the province of Ontario. My hat's off to them. What does it mean for issues? Well, the big issue in Ontario, obviously, is going to be the impact of the Trump tariffs. The Premier has put forward a plan to help deal with that. There are other issues that have popped up, like healthcare, housing costs, and when they form government, my guess is they'll roll up their sleeves, they'll get down and work right away, address tariffs, but also plan around housing and healthcare as well.
The opposition parties in this campaign, Mr. Peterson, didn't necessarily, I don't know if the right way to say it is take the bait, but they decided that their issue set would not be the one that Doug Ford wanted it to be around Donald Trump, that they would talk more about other issues like healthcare, for example, affordability in some instances, and ethics, vis-a-vis the Greenbelt controversy. Do you think that was the right move to make? And if they do come up short, we don't know for sure that they will, but let's say they do tonight based on public opinion polling, why do you think that is?
Well, look, again, if winning is everything, and it looks at where we sit right now from 4 hours from the polls closing, that Doug Ford is going to win. And so if that's how you measure these things, you would have to give him credit for taking advantage of the situation and strategically building a winning operation. Now, there's many other sides to this. I think there's a lot of people turned off politics. I don't think there was a lot of enthusiasm. I don't think the other opposition leaders were able to get any particular traction, given the winter time. Don't forget, it's cruel and unusual punishment to have election in the winter in this country. You can't nail in a lawn sign. And you think it's tough in Toronto, try it in Wawa or try it in Sault Ste. Marie. And there's sort of a resignation on this. Now, if you're crass and tough, you'd say this is a very cynical use of the political system. On the other hand, you say that's politics, and politicians all do that kind of thing. So you pick your poison here. But let me just say, whether we're going to come out of this with anything more is very questionable. And I think Doug's ability to persuade people that he had a voice in the tariff issues was pretty crafty, even though he doesn't have a voice. And he's actually a pipsqueak in these discussions. He's not going to be able to affect the outcome. I know, because I was in that position. I went through all of this. And it's nice to overestimate your own influence, but trust me, you can't really do that.
Mr. Hudak, I'll give you a chance to respond to that, but I'll also sort of frame it in maybe a little bit of a different way. Substantively, I understand exactly what Mr. Peterson is laying out, but I think that a lot of Canadians, and I have heard this, like where I went, you know, on the street, et cetera, people would come up and want to talk to me about how they didn't necessarily anticipate Doug Ford would have been the person to meet the moment politically, but in the vacuum of federal politics, because of all the uncertainty in Ottawa, there, you know, he was allowed a big space to be able to do that, wearing the hat, wearing the jersey, you know, saying all the things that I think were reflective of what a lot of Canadians felt. Ultimately, do you think that that contributed to it, despite what Minister Peterson rightly lays out as the Premier's, you know, limited, not just him, any Premier's limited ability to do much of convincing policymakers in Ottawa?
Vashi, when you're in a crisis, people expect you to lead, and lead. Premier Ford did. He was the strongest voice in Canada. I was there in Washington, D.C., and I saw him in action. He actually had a compelling vision and a genuine affection for Canadians and Americans both, and how we could similarly grow our economies, get our costs down, increase our defensive capabilities, and get more investments in our economy. I love that message. I hope we end up that way. But you know, we did some polling at Council of Public Affairs, where I'm a partner. No doubt healthcare, affordability, housing were issues. But ultimately, people decided, when you got a rough road ahead, who do you want to have the steady hand on the wheel? And overwhelmingly tonight, voters are going to say they want Doug Ford.
Well, Tim's right.
Go ahead,
this was
Mr. Peterson.
one issue in the country, and he is perceived to have stepped up to it. And there was a perceived lack of leadership in Ottawa. Things were changing with the Prime Minister going, and then, but look how rapidly things are changing in this country, federally and provincially. But I think in political terms, he seized the moment, and he put on the jersey at the right time, and I'll give him credit for that.
I have just a few seconds left. I wanted to get one more question to each of you about the opposition parties. And Mr. Peterson, because you all know what it's like to lead a party and the challenges associated with that. If Bonnie Crombie cannot make official party status tonight for the Liberals, is her leadership position in peril? Like, is that a must-do from your perspective, Mr. Peterson? And I'll get your opinion as well, Mr. Hudak.
No, it's not a must-do, but we put her under some pressure. I mean, all the polls say she's going to be, but who knows? There's no question the NDP have been squeezed out, I think, in this election to some extent, as they are federally at the moment. But things change very quickly in Canadian politics. So I think it's too early to hang crepe or to celebrate. I think we'll wait and see how this turns out. I don't expect there's going to be a very large turnout tonight, and we're going to see how that affects the outcome.
Yeah, you mentioned winter. Well, today is as wintry as it gets right across the province.
Well, some people like that.
Mr. Hudak, last word to you, the stakes for Bonnie Crombie in your view.
If she doesn't win her seat, she'll have to step down as Liberal leader, and I think that's at high risk. Right now, Vashi, in the streets of Mississauga, a lot of Tories are in her riding. Premier Ford actually visited there today and met with Polish community leaders. And neighboring Mayor Patrick Brown is actually helping the Tory campaign against his rival, Bonnie Crombie, and his mother-in-law running there. I think she loses. Martin Stiles will stay on as NDP leader, but I think that you'll see a new Liberal leader in the next provincial election.
As you describe Patrick Brown campaigning with, you know, as you say, as Mr. Peterson said, politics changes real fast in this country.
So true.
Yeah, I'll leave it on that note. I really appreciate you both of you making the time, rather, for the discussion and for your analysis tonight. Thank you to former Ontario Liberal Premier David Peterson, former PC leader Tim Hudak. Thank you very much.